Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast. We improvise every episode, including the intro. I am, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And every week we take story elements that we found at the bottom of a well and we put them into large vats of soup. And then we take those soups and we pour them together and we make a master soup. Welcome to the process of making master soup.
Yum.
Yeah, Reed, the soup that you made yesterday was very good. And the story you told me. Both of them were good. The story element I have for this week is history. And can I just say, boys, I'm excited for it.
History. Well, mine is something based on a book I'm reading.
And I have magic system.
Perfect. Should I go first?
I would like you to go first, and I would like to go after Seth because the information, the world building things that you will do will guide how I improvise my element into the story.
Perfect. So close your eyes with me, if you would, and picture the most idyllic and most classic fantasy world you can imagine, right? This is a world run by kings and queens, elves and dwarves, humans, orcs, right? Fairy forests, large towering spires, mad magicians who do magical works, right? It lives mostly in peace. There are, of course, skirmishes, but it lives mostly in peace. This is an idealized world. Everything, if you think about the classic fantasy world, this is it, right? And everyone operates in this world normally. I mean, there's elves, and they live in the forest. There's dwarves, and they live in the mountains. There's humans, they live everywhere. You know, there's drow, there's half-elves, there's orcs and goblins who waylay people in the mountains. There's halflings, sometimes called hobbits. And average people are heroes, should they want to be. Some people choose the life of a blacksmith. Some people choose the life of a innkeeper or a tanner or a farmer. Most people choose that which their parents were. You know, their parents teach them as they're young to choose these things. Sometimes a child gets sick of his blacksmithing apprenticeship and joins the army and goes and fights a campaign against the barbarian hordes. Sometimes heroes rise up, you know, legendary heroes. There have been hundreds of heroes. The world is open to everyone. Should a person want to study magic, all they need do is go to one of the many colleges, study magic. Should a person want to discover sneaking and stealth arts, all they need do is find one of the good-natured Thieves Guild members, you know, or sneak into a forest and find a Robin Hood type character who's willing to show them the path of the ranger, you know. Talk to the tower guard if you want to learn how to use a sword. This world has been going on for 100 years in this way. We have history of much longer than that, but for about 100 years has the world been going on in this way. The only thing that is out of the ordinary, the only thing that is different, the only thing that gives anyone any pause to say this isn't the perfect place to sort of capture everything that you would want and become everything you think you could be are the dreams. Every night when anyone sleeps, they have terrifying dreams. These dreams are of a dark, hellish landscape devoid of plant or sunlight, of large gray buildings that reach up to the heavens where there really is no light, of stumbling down pathways lit with a white, cold light, of futilely trying to move packages and rocks, of sitting in front of glowing lights for hours on hours. And so, but everyone experiences these, and so because the fact that everyone experiences these, everyone also understands, right? There are a number of famous wizards who are put in charge of trying to figure out why this is happening. There are a number of herbologists, people who work with herbs and stuff to try and settle people's minds when they sleep. And it works. Herbs have been developed to help children, especially because children have them from the beginning. to settle them so that they don't experience them until they reach about the age of 18. And then as soon as they reach the age of 18, as soon as they reach like an age in which they would start choosing their own job for themselves, the dreams come back. And so life is beautiful and hard and good in the waking world, but there's this kind of unsettling reality because everyone shares these dreams. Everyone has the same dream, not the same place or doing the same thing, but the architecture is the same. Everything is the same in these dreams. And so they want to know why. They don't know why. Do you guys want to know why?
Yeah.
Seth, do you want to know why?
Oh, yes. Yes, go ahead.
At the end of the last age, when nuclear war had driven human beings underground into their large bunkers, millions of them, hundreds of millions of them, billions of them, all around the world, an initiative was put out to put people to sleep in suspended animation in order to reduce the resources needed. And so these large concrete bunkers lit with fluorescent lights, hundreds of them all around the world. And in the dream state that they're put into, the person who developed the technology for this was, in fact, a developer for the full dive MMO RPGs of the future, right? Who had the most expertise developing the full dive technology. And so he created what was the most stable system that he understood and could give people a purpose, which was a fantasy world. So every day, everyone lives their life in this fantasy world, but then every night, people are called forth from their pods to do simple maintenance tasks, right? Not even their full brain functioning. And they sweep floors, they repair machines, they move cargo, they monitor computer systems, and the dream wasn't always there. They've been in this thing for about 200 years. People living and dying, having children, right? I'm not going to explain how a husband and a wife have children, but that all's happening. Children growing, living and dying during this whole time. Magic being the answer to why people live longer than normal. But about 100 years ago, humans began to notice the issues, the inconsistencies, the gameplay loops is what we call them in the gaming world, right? Anyone can learn magic. You just go to the wizard in the tower and accept his quest to gather crystals, and then you too can learn magic, right? Humans begin to see these things and break and try to wake up. And kind of like a virus, this happened. And so now humans remember. They don't remember in full clarity. They don't remember as themselves, but they remember waking up now at night and doing all these things that they are tasked to do. And that's on one side. But the reality is that people have forgotten that this is the world that they live in. You know, the fail-safes failed long ago, and people are living in a fantasy world. So the world will primarily take place in a fantasy world of magic. But there's this kind of aching need, and maybe that's a bit of the villain's desire to find out. Maybe that's a bit of the hero's desire to find out why everyone has these dreams. But the reality is the reactors are dying, power is failing, and the world is coming to an end. So that's the history of the world that we are in. Not the world that we're in, hopefully, but the world that our story is in. So what do you guys think?
Oh, it's great. But I was kind of chuckling at myself that I was surprised and I didn't see where it was headed. So the fantasy world, the idyllic thing, that's the real dream, and the dream, the nightmare is the actual existence. And I think that's hilarious.
And they have no context for it because they're underground in a bunker lit with like fluorescent lights and cement, and it all looks so alien and foreign to them, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
cool.
Seth, you want to introduce your magic system, or do you have any interesting world building ideas?
Sure. I'll bring in, whether it's the magic system or a magic system. I have a bit of an idea for it, but I don't know. We'll see. So the magic system that I came up with was a type or way to capture an essence of something.
Okay.
Kind of like to capture an essence of the wind or of fire or of heat or of a plant or, anything that you could conceive to, capture its essence. you'd have to write a name for it on something or carve it into something, a piece of wood, a stone, a gem. And let's say if someone made a solid gold bar, carved with this name on it, right? It wouldn't necessarily make it more or less powerful.
Okay.
But be like you would carve on something, let's say like a stone, right? You'd carve out the name of something that you would identify as the essence of fire, right? And you would create a name for it. It wouldn't have to be fire itself, but something that you would come up with, a name or a phrase, right? And then you would keep it by the fire on the off chance that the essence of fire would find a home there, and then it would light up, right? The carving in it would, if it had taken, it would then like color itself or light up in some way. Maybe not luminescence, but definitely have a change to the name that you have written on there, be it a stick or a rock or something. And then let's say like if you held fire, right? And then you could then say the name that you wrote on there, and you could make yourself like a torch, right? Or a lighter. Or if you like made like a chime, and decorated it up to kind of entice the essence of wind, right? And you set it out and you carved a name on it. And then let's say it gathered that essence of the wind and you put it on, your shoes or on a horse or something. You could activate that, and it would then carry that speed of the wind through your footwear or the horse or the mode of transportation, right? And so you could collect a lot of these. And again, just because you had, let's say, an emerald, it could hold a weak essence. The let's say quality of the item doesn't necessarily guarantee a stronger or weaker essence that it can contain, right? So there's no particular status in it, but that's kind of the basic idea of it.
That's really interesting.
So one could adorn like different pets with different things, and then that pet, like I said with the horse, with like the wind, or you could attach him to a different pet, a dog or a cat or a ferret or something else that then would be able to kind of channel through that, with the way that you use the pet, or then the pet taking on some of the aspect of like taking a fire, I don't know, essence totem, and then you'd put it on your little lizard, and you could make like a fire breathing pet, or and the different essences of whatever could be just about endless, so long as you had the patience or the curiosity to see if you could catch it or not.
And I imagine some essences are much more likely to find a home in totems, and some essences are, it's like some of them will immediately go to a place, maybe depending on how prevalent they are, and other of them won't, because you said it's like you'd put it next to a fire in the hope that the essence would find a home there. Is it like a fuel that's like used up, or is it just like, it's kind of like enchanting? You've enchanted this thing and now it has that power or that essence in it.
I would say it would be like more of an enchanting.
Okay.
Right. With the name. Right. Yeah. I don't think it would necessarily be used up, just that some would be stronger and some would be weaker.
Right.
But you have no way of like enticing anything stronger or weaker based on, the material you used. You could come up with different names hoping to entice,
I suppose different aspects of the fire.
Right.
Because like a campfire would be a lot different than, would maybe respond to a different name than like a volcano fire would.
Yeah. Although you might put it out and you might entice an essence of the heat of the fire, right? And then have to, find a different way to describe flame as opposed to the heat. Right. And so that would be kind of a way around it. But again, what's that?
Can you imagine a person who like was able to describe just the burning effect? So they can like touch something now and it burns away without any light, without any flame. It just like turns to ash.
Yeah.
Oh, so the names of things some names are really common, but like trying to get a really specific name. I had this idea as you were talking of a woman with like a bun of hair with like a bunch of like dangling ornaments. And she walks up to someone and she asks who they are, and they say a word, and a little ornament in her hair, like it's like a little bell, and like ding-a-ling-a-ling. And she looks at them, and this has the essence of truth in it. And so when it detects a lie, it like reacts.
Wow.
Like I said, what could be contained in it would be nearly endless, as long as you could find a way to describe uniquely the essence of what something would be, and find a place, like you take there and say a bunch of truths to like a little earring, until it was like, I've captured the essence of, truth.
Right.
Or, even, I'm thinking taking where you want to put this, because my mind went in two ways. One, this could be something that's used inside of their fantasy game, or it could be something that is a change in the world if they ever make it out of there and have to make it to the surface.
Right, for sure.
That's why I said
part of my thought is it's yes. The answer is yes. Because one thing I really love about the Play to Live series by D. Roos is this idea that like, which is a lit RPG, right? Which is a book about a fantasy game. And one thing I really like about that is that my idea is that the creator of the Matrix or the suspended animation environment, he's dead. Right? He's been dead for 200 years. But when he created the thing, he didn't understand the power of all the souls of the world being put together to focus on a singular reality. And so like, it wasn't 50 years into the original launching of I'm not going to call it a game because it wasn't a game. It's an environment. It's the
suspended animation.
Yeah, it's an environment. It's a game, but it doesn't have scores. It doesn't have leveling. It doesn't have any of that. It's a world. It's a reality. But like enough human souls were like kind of focused on that it gave birth to the essence of truth, right? So maybe it was an aspect of the game that enough souls were focused on that it became it became correct, it became true. And so this magic system could persist beyond the actual environment because enough human souls with the divine spark were centered on an essence of truth in it, and therefore it became real, an emerging reality based on the faith and belief, but also based on, the holy mystery that we don't understand about human beings and their power to create. Mm-hmm. Like, in my opinion, that's the divine spark given to us by God,
Cool.
So that's really cool, Seth. My brain, like, that's a very awesome magic system. I'm trying to like, how would I make a fireball? How would I make a teleportation circle? How would I make flight? It's like you would create a bunch of these things and then maybe mix them together. Mm-hmm. You'd build a ship out of wood that was blessed with or ruined with or enchanted with, or however the word is, with lightness but sturdiness. So that it was that much lighter, and pretty soon you'd have something that would float on the wind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, were you going to say your thing, Reed, or can I keep going? My brain is working.
Well, I'm going to just throw this in, and I might add more, but I'll just get the bones of it so you can have it to work on.
Okay.
I'm reading a book which I read. It's been a long time since I'm rereading a book that I read years ago, and it was written just after the breakup of the Soviet Union. And it was imagining like going forward in that world, which was a lot of people had a lot of different ideas about it, right? But but this is the Jack Ryan series by Tom Clancy. And his first book was Hunt for Red October, and then he did the prequel Patriot Games, and then the next one, well, there were two prequels actually.
Right.
But anyway, then the Cardinal in the Kremlin, the Clear and Present Danger. Well, now I'm reading Sum of All Fears.
Yeah.
And so the way what you have is you have a disaffected people group, and the way they're acting, they are terrorists. Their intention is to wage unconventional warfare because they don't have the power of a nation state to tax, and they're a gang, but they draw their appeal from being a disaffected people group.
Right.
And while you were talking about this world, you've still got people that are inhabiting this idyllic world, and you threw out there that there was these orcs. Well, what I've got is my idea is you've got an orc he's got his little gang of people that he leads, and he's on the outs. Like the big guys, that he is ostracized from his orc clan because the guys think, in this world, this idyllic world, the orcs actually have it pretty good. And as long as they stay within their bounds, the elves and the dwarves and the men don't, beat them up too much. But they still can do their thing, but it's got to stay within bounds, and there's rules, and it's got to stay within the idyllic framework. But this guy's been ostracized, and he's got a group of disaffected orcs that they want to exact some sort of, they want to make a statement that they're not, that their aggrieved status has never been resolved, and they've got to make a statement. And in the book, Some of All Fears, peace was breaking out in the Middle East, and you had this group of terrorists in Lebanon, and the leader was dying of cancer, and he was like desperate to bring something to fruition, and there was another player was a guy that had worked for the communists, and he was, part of a group of German communists that wanted to, set the West free from the slave masters, and so he's in on it. And then another character comes in that joins this guy's group in the book. I'm talking about in the book, but I'm going to give you an idea of where I'm going with it. He's a Native American who's gotten athwart the law, and so he's fled, and he's hooked up with these guys in Lebanon. Well, anyway, I'm seeing this orc and some goblins and some disaffected dwarves, and he's got kind of a gathering of people that they want to deal with, resolving their grievances, right, or get revenge,
right.
And they get in the book, this Drew's farmer goes back to this thing fell in his garden, and he just buried it, and he thought it was a bomb that was broken and just didn't go off, so he just buried it because it was too heavy. It was huge, but it turned out it was a nuclear bomb.
A nuclear bomb.
A nuclear bomb, and what had happened was it looked like the Syrians were going to break through on the Golan Heights, and they loaded these. They didn't know if they were up against the last desperate throw of the dice, and this bomb was loaded on an A4 Skyhawk, but it was never hooked up, because then they got an emergency thing. Instead, they're on the wing pylons, like rockets and stuff to shoot up tanks, was loaded. But this unconnected bomb was just hanging there on the center line of this A4 attack fighter, and he went and flew his mission, but got shot down. And the bomb broke free and landed in this Drew's farmer's
and that's where
garden.
The terrorists found it?
Well, then here, years later, frost heave and whatnot, he's digging in his garden and it goes clang. Oh, yeah, there's that thing. So he calls his son, who's an engineer and had been wounded terribly in the war, and he has friends with these terrorists. And he comes out, and so he asks his friends, would you be interested? Because they're always looking for, Israeli munitions. We might be able to repurpose this bomb. Well, they come and dig it up, and they find it. It's like the shape of a 2,000-pound bomb, but it's not, something about it is wrong. Well, they get an A-frame and they hoist it up, and they get it on the truck, and they bring it back to the lab, and then he's tinkering with it, and he finds out it's an atomic bomb. So the storyline is they smuggle this thing into America with the plans of using it in a truck bomb and using a plausible truck communications network. They use a spray paint the ABC logo or something on it, and they're at the Super Bowl, which is being held in Denver. And the idea is to blow this bomb up and then get the Americans to blame the Russians and have nuclear war. And it's really.
So what's the thing that you're adding to the story?
So this. Well, how did the world get this way? This guy in his nightmare state is cleaning up some debris and comes across whatever doomsday, nuke or whatever doomsday weapon that had caused this whole thing. And so he has figured out a way to cross worlds and bring this
okay, so he can, like, when he goes to sleep and wakes up, he's in like full control of himself.
Yeah.
Where everyone else is kind of watching it happen, he can actually walk around and do things. So he kind of has this kind of cynical view of the world.
Right.
Because he knows what everyone is.
Yes.
You're dead already.
Yeah. And so he just wants to, his whole thing is him and his group of henchmen, they want to make a big splash.
Gotcha. What I was thinking about, because I think that there needs to be a disaffected group that doesn't just kind of push the nightmares down.
Yeah.
I think that he is a disaffected group of the disaffected group.
Yeah.
Right? Away in the mountains, over the mountains in the Darklands, there's a group of people who embrace the dream.
Yeah.
Right? They aren't evil, but they aren't exactly good either.
They want to live in reality.
Yeah. And so they, are formed of people who are disaffected of the kind of idyllic world that exists.
Yeah.
They don't want to kill them, but they've started to like reconstruct the facility to understand it more. They paint all of their walls the cement gray.
Yeah.
To try and be more connected to the dream.
Right.
And this is a group that this orc and his band were a part of that because they were disenfranchised.
Yep.
And then they were like, we have to rise up. We have to prove to them. We have to show them. We have to hurt them. And the group said, no, that we're here to understand.
Yeah.
Like, we don't even know if what you're saying, this is what we think is happening. And so he's disenfranchised from that group and now using his knowledge to try and ruin the whole world.
Yes, pretty much. So it's his hope is that he doesn't understand fully what the capabilities of this device is, but he knows that it is going to be bad, and he can inflict a lot of pain and suffering on people that have it coming.
Right, absolutely.
So something I'm thinking maybe with some of the more disenfranchised creatures of the world. Because I would say in some fantasy settings, and I don't know, I'm thinking of some of what I'm pretty sure that different races hate each other in some of the D&D stuff. But aside from that, other instances where like orcs or goblins are like kind of part of things, not necessarily evil, but they're, maybe just more cranky or
considered like the outlanders, the weirdos.
Yeah. And so in a fantasy setting, let's say, especially if you were playing a game, you have your groups of people that would go in choosing that as a, beefed up stats, maybe,
right.
The different skill sets that they have. I'm thinking of, like setting up a D&D character, right, where you might pick like, a barbarian with rage and
right. Well, you'd pick an orc because it's got 120 feet of dark vision. Who doesn't want to see 120 feet in the dark, Exactly.
And so at first, let's say there's some enticement, and that's why then some of these people have been locked into this same race,
right,
per se, when they step into the suspended animation. And what happens is that then when they die in game or in the suspended animation, right, if they're fighting, right, a lot of times in something like that, there's, revive and, You have your mages and healers, and,
Right. Yeah.
stuff like that. And so something that many of the other races have, let's say, exemplified in is like revives, healing, whereas maybe that's not as common with the orcs or people that have more of like the aggressive stance. So they're going to be more prone to be, because let's say, at least you and I have played some of these games, right? The grifters, the people who are like, yeah, I'm going to be an orc and I'm going to have a bandit group and we're just going to harass travelers, right? Because
Right.
that's
Right.
a cool thing to do. The more often they die, right, they would get reborn, as it would. And let's say over time, or maybe because this thing is waning, the like connection between like taking on an idea of a new character for some of these people that might not just come to their end in their own natural lifespan, but then are constantly getting killed in
Right.
suspended
Right.
animation. That's possibly why they start feeling that the dream is something else, maybe being hyper fixated on it because they've experienced, let's say, more often experienced like okay, your character died, we're
Yeah.
restarting you into the
A
system.
reevaluation of like their personality, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Interesting.
perhaps that is, one of the aspects that play into why some people tend to embrace the dream a little bit more. It seems a little bit more real to them over time, or possibly some of these disenfranchised groups, maybe after a while, I don't know if then they would then like start waking up or being more alert while they're,
Yeah.
technically out of the suspended animation. So then realizing more and more of what might be going on, outside. Perhaps there's some that have gotten out and haven't gone back in,
Right.
or go back in and out on like their own terms.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all those are very good points and good ideas. So it's the outliers, the ones who are used to dying more, who have that kind of personality dissidence, which allows them to kind of become disenfranchised sooner. And then it lets a whole bunch of different variations take place inside of when they're actually in the dream and then out. Well, yeah, when they're in the dream and then out of it as well. Cool. Well, I'm liking how this is going so far. I think
it's going to be a good story.
be able to blend an interesting level of cool fantasy tropes and interesting fantasy things with some more, maybe slightly more dystopian, but definitely modern age realities. And then the ending's kind of up in the air because like maybe they just all decide that that's it, or how do they figure out? How do they figure out how to get out of this dream? Tune in next week to hear. If you liked this episode and liked where it's going, let me know. Send me an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or message me on Twitter at @getsbettercast. If you didn't like this episode, send Reed a text. Here's his phone number.
867
5309. Yes.
8675309.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Bye.